recording. Good to go. All right, we're recording. So this is third-person map. Why am I using the third-person map? Just so I can see my character walk around, so you can see that they enter the trigger boxes and stuff. What we do with the code, it doesn't have to be the third-person character map. There's nothing special about the third-person character map. All right, let's do it. So I'm going to go up and use the level blueprint. So up top here in this little hierarchy looking path symbol drop down, if you click on that, oh, there's another place to create blueprint classes right there. New empty blueprint class. Convert selection to blueprint class. Convert what I have selected in my level to a blueprint class. That's pretty cool too. But I'm looking for open level blueprints. Level blueprints are the simplest way to use blueprints. So here's what we got here. I have my big window here in the middle where I can do all my code. Details panel on the right. I'm just going to start hooking things up. So if I right click, I'm going to get a event begin play. How do I know what these things are called? Because I've done this a lot. You can go through all of the list of different nodes if you want to read about them in the documentation, but there is a lot. And like I said earlier, you won't use most of them. So I'm going to connect my event begin play to a very simple node, a very useful node for debugging called print string. See, there's lots of similarly named things, but I'm getting print string. This is a level blueprint. So quick, simple things. You should know this from doing materials, but if you control click on your wire, you can pick it up and move it to something else. I cannot connect an execution wire to a data input. That's why it's telling me you can't do that, man. So if you want to move it around, you can do that. If you alt click on the wire, it just disappears. I think I showed you this before with materials, but if you learn anything in this class, you should learn that the Q button on your keyboard will align these nodes. So Q, look at that, perfect organization. I'm telling you. There's also a lot of other different commands that you can use to like right justify, left justify, top align, bottom align, but I'll leave you to find those on your own. So print string, this is the hello world. If you've ever programmed anything, the first thing that you ever learn is how to print hello world to the screen. So when I begin play, I have a string of text that's going to be printed to my screen that says hello. I'm going to feel very welcomed. So let's check it out. I'm going to click play. Look at that. Boom. I feel welcomed. So what if I wanted to make that a little bit more interesting? Because it seems like you guys are not very entertained. Sorry by how simple that was. What if I wanted to make it a little bit more interactive? And instead of having it begin when I click play, I'll have it hooked up to a keyboard button. So maybe I'll just do the H key. So I'm going to type in H key here, and I'm going to find, so you have all these keyboard events that you can do. H key. Not the debug key H, but the actual keys themselves, keyboard events. H. You can copy and paste nodes just like you can copy and paste anything. Control C, Control V. So when I hit the H key, I'm going to have it say hitting the H key. Makes sense, right? You can also expand this box and change the duration, the color. This node is just for debugging. This is not the way that you print text to your game screen in Unreal. This is how you hook print string up to something so you can see the data coming out of an input. You hook it up so you can give silly demos in Brooklyn at IDM. This is what print string is for. But now when I hit the H key on my keyboard, it's going to print the string that says hitting the H key. I'm going to click compile up top, which you should always do because it will give you errors if you have any errors, help you debug it. I'm going to click play. I know it's a little tiny up in the top left corner of my screen here, but when I hit the H key, you should see it says hitting the H key. You can't see it. Are you not? Oh, it is. It's there. It's just the glare. I can't see it. The top left of the viewport. Oh. You don't sound very impressed. No. I'll change the color to red instead. See that red text? That's me hitting the H key on my keyboard. So this might seem incredibly simple, but this is the basis of all blueprint programming in Unreal. You have an input, you have an event, the level begins, you hit a key on the keyboard, you hit an Arduino button, you hit a key on your MIDI controller. Those are events. When an event happens, you connect it to an action. In this case, my action is the very exciting printing of text to the screen, right? But that action can be anything or a string of things. Turn the light on, kill the player, change the color of the level, move the blocks and make them all fall down, open the door because the player entered the key code. It's all just an event and then an action, even though this seems like a very lame example to start with. Start small, and then we build up. Question?
So why, for the H key print string, why doesn't that not need to be directly attached to begin play?
Because it's independent of begin play. I mean, I could connect. We'll do it live. I'm going to disconnect this one. Now, if I wanted to hit the H key connected to that as well, when I hit play, it's going to say hitting the H key, even though I'm not really hitting the H key. And then when I actually hit the H key, it's going to do it as well, right? There are some nodes that let you plug multiple execution strings into them that have both of these wires plugged into the print string. Sort of like a power outlet that has multiple power jacks in it. You connect all your power inputs into it. But sometimes a node doesn't let you do that. This is a very useful thing to know right now, so make note of this. It's a little confusing because we've been using sequencer. There's this thing called sequence, which is like a power splitter that I just used the analogy for. Sequence, if you type in sequence, you get the power strip, which you can add on more and more and more pins. I think an infinite number of pins. So one input goes to as many outputs as you want, that which then connect to individual things. Sequence is what it's called, not sequencer, but sequence. Everybody on the same page? Feels good right now? All right, we're going to start ramping up the difficulty. Maybe at some point today you will be impressed. All right, let's do something else. Let's disconnect this event begin play. We'll still have the H key. No, actually, I'll connect this back to hello. All right, so we have everything we started with. But now I'm going to do something a little bit more interesting. I'm going to use this event called event tick. Event tick sends out an impulse or a bang every frame. Okay, so it's pretty computationally intense, but we're going to use it right now. And we're going to use this event tick to get my current player's location in space, XYZ location in space. So event tick, I'm going to drag out print string because I want this data printed to the screen. See right now by default it says hello because I haven't connected anything to this pink input. And I'm gonna, what am I gonna say? Get player pawn. Again, how do you know this stuff? Just from experience.
This is like the most part.
How do you know?
Yeah.
Yeah, that sucks. That's why I know more than you about this from experience. Although next week, who knows? You could cram. So get player pawn. From what player? Player 0. Player 0 is the default player. You can have multiple players, like if you had a multiplayer game. In this case, I'm a single player, so player 0. And I'm going to return the value, and I want that value printed to the screen. Notice when I drop this here, it's going to convert data into a string. So it's going to convert a number data into text data to be able to print to the screen. Oh, no, I messed up. Get player pawn, right? What do I want to do with the player pawn? I want to get actor location. Get actor location, right? And then I want to print that to the screen. It's gonna take vector data, X, Y, and Z, which is yellow, which is why that pin's yellow, and it's gonna change it into a string, which is printable characters, to the screen. And sometimes when you're converting, if you are converting data, this data conversion node will be automatically created. Students always ask, how did you create that yellow to pink thing? Automatically gets created when you change from vector, in this case, to string data. So now if I compile and save, move this out of the way, as soon as I click play, see a bunch of crap starts getting printed to the screen over there. What's that say? 900X, 1110Y, and 92.013Z. As soon as I start moving around my character, look at that data change. Pretty cool, right? The X and Y data is changing, but the Z is not changing because I'm not jumping. If I start jumping, X and Y stays the same, but now Z is changing. Makes sense, right? If I go up this ramp, my Z should change because I'm going up in Z. If I fall off this ramp, it should go back to 92, whatever. So I could use this information to trigger events. If the player is within a certain threshold, do something. If the X value is between this and this, do something. And when I say do something, I'm being vague because it can be anything, really. Changing the brightness of a light, changing the position of a mesh around the level, changing the health level of enemies. I don't know, I'm thinking like, let's go back to the Mario example. Like Mario's running over this bridge towards Bowser's castle, right? And as Mario gets closer to the castle, all the lava balls start flying, and there's more and more and more the closer he gets to the castle. Or maybe the music gets louder and more ominous because it's detecting the player position in the level in proximity to the castle. So not just a game, but it could be used for live performance too. Game, live performance, I use those words interchangeably. Still not entertained.
That's good. I mean,
Tough crowd.
it's top time schedule.
Yeah. I hear you. All right, well, let's do something maybe less about printing to the screen and more world-based then. I think this is going to be the one that's really going to impress you, I promise. All right, what do we want to do here? Let's create we're going to add a trigger box to the world. Trigger box is in, actually don't know what tab it's in. I always just type it in. Box collision, or trigger box. So trigger box is an invisible volume that you place in your level, and you can scale it however you want, whatever size you want. So when my player enters this box or collides with this box, they don't have to fully enter it even. My player runs up this ramp and hits this box, something's going to happen. Okay? What do we want to have happen? I'm going to turn on a light. So I'm going to place a point light here. We'll keep it low to the ground so it's bright. Maybe we'll make it more bright so it's more noticeable. Even more bright. Yeah, just like that. Okay, doing it live. So it's important when you're doing blueprints that you select on the thing that you want to add to the level blueprint. So I'm clicked on the collision box right now. When I right click while I'm selected on something, up top here, it's going to feed you things based on what you have selected. So if I didn't have the trigger box selected right now, it wouldn't say anything about a trigger box. But since I do, it has all that useful information right there. What do I want to do? I want to add an event for that trigger box. So I'm going to right click on the drop down for add event. There's a bunch of different stuff here. I'm going to click on the drop down for collision. There's options for add actor begin overlap when the box starts getting overlapped. There's options for when that overlap ends, when I pass through the box. And there's also an option for just when you hit it. I'm just going to do begin overlap. Actually, I'm going to do both. Begin overlap, and this is where I get myself into trouble, where I decide to do unexpected things. So on actor begin overlap, what actor? See it in parentheses right there, the trigger box. So when it begins overlap and when overlap ends. What do we want to do next? Well, I want to control the light, right? So I'm going to go and I'm going to click on the light. Because this is a level blueprint, I need to select the things in the level. If this was a class blueprint, all the things would be listed up here in a components window, which currently doesn't exist. So I'm going to go and select the light. I'm going to right click. And look at that. It says things about the point light that I have selected. I want to create a reference to that point light. Every time I zoom in and zoom out, it makes the pop-up menu disappear. So here I have a reference to that point light, which happens to be named point light. I want to set the intensity of this light. So I'm going to drag out from the reference to the point light, type in set intensity. Set intensity, point light component. Notice there is a lot of different types here. They all do different things. Set intensity. Which one?
What do you know?
How do you know? I'm gonna have to. You're gonna leave. You're on your own. You're gonna have to try it. If this one doesn't work, then we'll try the other ones.
What if there are like 2,000 assets?
Well, better cancel your weekend plans. So set intensity, and I'm going to duplicate set intensity because we're gonna set the intensity of the light. We're going to turn it on, and then we're going to turn it off. So when I exit the box, I'm going to set the intensity to 0. When I enter the box, I'm going to set the intensity to what do I have here? 200. And actually, I need to set the intensity to the light by default to 0. Otherwise, the light will be on already. right? I want to turn the light on with code. So set new intensity to 200. Sounds good. And also I need to connect this point light component to the target of the intensity there, just like it is here. So set intensity when? When something happens with this trigger box. Set intensity on what? The target is this point light. What's the new intensity? Well, this is hard-coded in as 200. But see, it's green. So that means that it could be a variable. I could have the intensity of the light controlled by the position of my character in the level, which we already just did. It's kind of a lame example, but it's what we already have done. I could take the x value, say, of, right, let's take the z value. I could take the z value of my character while they're jumping to control the intensity of the light. And that data would come in, and it would, instead of a hard-coded value there like the 200, it would be a dynamic value that's being controlled interactively. All right, let's see if this works. Moment of truth. All right, I'm gonna drive up here. Oh, look at that. Thank you. It's crickets. Are you not impressed? Are you not entertained? Speechless. Thank you.
Nice.
Everybody's final project is going to have like a light that just turns really bright. And nobody is going to be amused. So look at that. We turned on a light dynamically. There's some video game stuff right there. See the blueprint. I will copy this blueprint into the chat. Check this out though. Copy. Oh, come on. It's not going to work. It's supposed to work. Oh. Fuck you, Word. You can you know what? Notepad. Oh, not OneNote. Oh my God. Man, this guy needs to fix his licenses. Hey, most of you struggle sharing your screen today.
Wait, where's the power button on the laptop?
That's a tricky one. So you can copy and paste blueprints and paste them as textual data that you can then share to your friends and family. It's pretty neat. You just copy this in. Check this out. I don't know if you should delete this, teacher. This is really destructive. What? I just pasted that text into Blueprints. There's also this website. I forget what it's called. Does anybody know the Blueprint website? Blueprint saved. This is terrible answer. I don't know what I want to call it. Blueprint notebook. I'm like 80-year-old person using Google. And it's not UE5. Now I'm getting blue notebooks. Wow, what an idiot. What's it called?
What is it?
There's a website where it's just a repository for blueprint codes. So,
Maybe type that in.
huh?
Maybe type that in. Like, repository.
Blueprint repository, Unreal Engine. Yeah, that's what it's called. But this is a Reddit thread. But it is Blueprint UE. Because it's a website that has Blueprint embedding in it, which is pretty cool because you can go on Reddit and show everybody your sick, wicked blueprints that you made, and everybody can scroll around and look at them without having to download it. So it's
Nice.
Blueprintue.com. You know what? I'll paste that into the chat too. Blueprint notebook. What an idiot. And you can save these and stuff. And so useful to share between teams or other people, or for debugging help if you need to ask on a forum or something. So you can use the notepad trick, or you can copy and paste from these as well. Like movable cube. Ooh, I'm going to go to new sliding, whatever that is. So I could copy all this, and assuming they're not using custom nodes, which can be a problem, I should be able to just copy this right into here. Yeah, so there's custom stuff going on here. It's asking me how I want to resolve it. That's cool. That's a UE5 feature. It used to be it would just not say anything. Do nothing, confirm.
You really just copy and pasting all you're doing, right?
No, there's a lot of other stuff that's happening back. No, I'm copying and pasting. It's cool, right? Like it's a dumb, simple thing, but it's actually pretty useful in day-to-day stuff.
That's C++. What's the...
No, this is just, I don't know, whatever sort of scripting thing they have Unreal, how it calls its blueprint nodes and stuff. And it's just saying like, what is the node called? What is the position on the grid? What is which pins are connected to it? That's all this is. Cool. So this is just useful general UI stuff that's nice to know. So we set the color of the light, but what if we want to do some animation? Let's check this out. What are we gonna do here? Let's create another light. You know what? Let's have this one be a spotlight. Let's zoom it up a little bit, and just put it here in the world. Crank up the brightness. Maybe we'll change the color. Pick a color, somebody. Nice.
No fire?
Not
No
yet.
fire.
Not yet. We'll get there. We'll get there. We're running out of time, though. So, spotlight here. So I would need to get a reference to the spotlight in my level blueprint. So I'm clicked on the spotlight in the world. I'm still recording.
Why does it say
Oh. Because the print string text on that's painted to the window, it won't pop up in a packaged game. It's just for debugging. All right, so what was I doing? A reference to the spotlight. So right click. Remember what we have clicked on. It's going to pop up top here. Create reference to spotlight. There I have a reference to my spotlight. What do I want to do? I want to set the intensity again. Set intensity, spotlight component. That automatically gets created. I'm going to have this start with event begin play. So I'm going to have this event begin play plugged into print string. It's going to paint hello to the screen, and then after it paints hello to the screen, it's going to go up here and set the intensity of this light. But I don't want it to just set the intensity of the light. I want to have it be animated. I'm just going to have the light fade in and fade out. So we've done stuff like this on Sequencer, right? But how do you do it with blueprint code? You can use blueprints to trigger sequences, but we don't really need a full-blown sequencer for this. So I'm going to use something that's more simple. I'm going to use a timeline in blueprints. It's called timeline. Type in timeline, add timeline. Call this timeline whatever you want. I'll just call it spotlight intensity. You can have one timeline drive a lot of things too if you wanted to. So instead of from event begin play, this is going to go up and start the timeline. And the timeline is just going to oscillate from 0 to 100 intensity. And as the timeline animates, it's going to execute out from the update pin, and what is it updating? It's updating set intensity. Set intensity of what? The target spotlight. But there's no output data pin here that we could use for intensity. Well, I have to go and make it. Makes sense, right? So if I double click on the spotlight, we open up a brand new window. This is the brand new tab up top here. So if I want to get back to my event graph, I just click on the other tab. If you ever accidentally close down your event graph, well, you should just shut down your computer and go home. You just double click on over here and it should pop right back up. Ta-da. Double click on timeline. And I have a big gray window. It doesn't really look like there's much here because there isn't. I need to add some new tracks here. So the green add track button, I'm going to add a float track. There's different types of tracks. Float track gives you decimal values. A vector track is going to give you X, Y, Z. Event tracks are for events, like Boolean events. And color track is going to give you R, G, and B to control the colors of the rainbow. So I want to control the intensity of the light, oscillate it on and off. So I'm going to use a float track. Should say with all things that I demo today, or really in anything in the class, there's half a dozen different ways to do the same thing. Really depends on what it is that you're trying to do, and that's how you determine the most efficient way to do it, or maybe it's just the only way you know how to do it. I try to show you the way that I think is the most straightforward. It's not necessarily the best way, depending on what it is that you're trying to do. So I've created a new track here, a new float track, and its default name is new track _0. I'm going to right click on that. Where am I right clicking? Just right here where it says new track _0. I think as soon as you create it, it allows you to type in a name immediately, but I clicked off of it. So right click, rename. And I'm just going to call this light intensity. What you call it here doesn't matter. It's just good to stay organized. So light intensity. If I go back to my event graph, check it out. Oh, I should zoom in with blueprints. If I zoom in here, look at that. I have a new output data pin that is green because it's float value. It's called light intensity that I can then plug in to set the intensity. But there's nothing set here. It's just going to be the same intensity because I haven't animated anything yet. So in this timeline, functions pretty much like any timeline that you've used before. It's a little bit more minimal, so it might take a second to get your bearings here. But most important thing is set your length. How long do you want the entire animation to be? 5 seconds seems kind of long, so maybe I'll do 2.5 seconds. And you can use right click to pan around this. You can use zoom in and out with the mouse wheel. You see that the light gray area now is clipped to 2.5, which I set the length to. Now, how do I make keyframes? If you right click here, see it says add key to curve float 0. So add key. And then I'm going to right click again and add another key. And I'm going to right click again and add another key because I want 3 to go up and down, up and down. So where do I want these located? You can grab these and drag them around. But to be more precise, you can type in the time and the value up top. And this is the same for the vector tracks or the RGB tracks, the color track. Same basic idea, keyframes and values. So I'm going to click on that one. I'm going to set the time to 0, and I'm going to set the value to 0 so it starts out off. I'm going to select the last one. I guess I could copy and paste this, but I'm not. The end of my timeline is 2.5, so I'm setting that to 2.5, and the value is also going to be 0. And then what do I want the value to be? I guess that's right in the middle, so 1.25 would be right in the middle. And the value, let's just make that 100. When you make that value really big, can see that you have to zoom way out to see the keyframe because it's such a big difference. You can click on these little, I'm not sure what they're called actually, but you can click on the one on the right and it's going to compress the graph to make it much more readable. So now see, on the right side, you can see that the numbers go from 0 to 100, and then the top side of the grid, we're going from 0 to 2.5 seconds with a keyframe in the middle. So 0 seconds, 0 value, 1.25 seconds, 100 value, and then at the end, at 2.5 seconds, back down to 0. Pretty simple. You see these are linear keyframes right now. If I wanted like a nice curve or something like that, just like keyframes in Sequencer, you can right click on them. You can also use keyboard shortcuts, and I could change this from a linear key interpolation to auto or something else. User, auto, grab onto the handles and drag out how smooth it is. Mess around with that. I'm probably just going to make all of them auto, so they all have a nice smoothing to them. Select them all, right click, auto. So now it has a little bit of easing on it rather than harsh straight lines. So easing in and easing out. Cool. Compile. Save. Now what happens when I click play? Oh, look at that. It actually did work. But it stopped because I didn't tell it to loop. My bad. So there's a loop button in the timeline right there. Click loop, compile, save. Now it should work. Beautiful, right? So in a vacuum, these examples seem incredibly simple. I know you're all super disappointed, but this is the basis that all this stuff is built on top of. When I hit the trigger box, we're running out of time, but when I hit the trigger box, I could have it not only set the value of the light, but I could also trigger the fire. Trigger the fire sound. If you stay in the box for too long, kill player. We start to add all these things together to make them a little bit more interesting instead of just these one-to-one actions. And again, all this stuff with this code is if you're making something that's interactive, because you need to have it be dynamic. If you're doing a live performance in the motion capture studio and you want your player or your actor to hit a specific spot on the floor, and when they hit that spot, something happens, you can't control when that happens. I guess you could script it so you could have somebody there with a keyboard that's like, yeah, they're pretty much on the floor. Go. You could do it that way. You could hack it together. But if you actually wanted to do it with code, you could do it that way as well. And a game has to be this way because you don't control. Miyamoto does not control when Mario is touching the coin, right? The players control that. So it has to be done with code. It can't be done with keyframes. If you're making a film, it can be done with keyframes because you control everything, and the film is the exact same every single time it's played. That's not to say that you can't make films live, because then you don't have to use keyframes. Any questions so far? Let me show one more thing, and then I'll answer your question. I'm going to do a side-by-side here. So, side-by-side. So what am I doing? Triggering the box, right? Let's close this window down a little bit. So I click on this little flyout menu here. I guess you don't have to click on the flyout menu if it's expanded, but there's this little menu up here that says no debug object selected. If I select these objects or any objects that I want to be selected, I can go up there and select that. And when I click play now, I should actually see, actually this is level wide. It's not just the nodes. So you don't have to select the nodes. You just have to select the map in the dropdown. Hold on, let me stop that real quick. Check out what's happening when I click play. See this wire? It's showing us that it's active. It's sending out impulses constantly because this is event tick. It sends out an impulse every single frame, whatever your frame rate is. When I go and step into the trigger box, this orange line is going to kick out from here. So you're actually going to visually see the logic in your code, which is pretty neat for debugging. I know nothing impresses this group, so. Oh, look at that. Boom, boom. In the box, out of the box, in the box, out of the box, in the box. Could be useful for debugging because you visually see what's sending off triggers. Not in this simple example where we have very basic code. If you can't debug this, then it's going to be much tougher when you start to do more complicated things. But when you have tons and tons of spaghetti wires all over the place because you were super unorganized, it can be useful to see what's happening, what the flow of things is. If I went in and I added a delay node here, have this delay for, I don't know, 2 seconds. So when I enter the box, it's going to trigger and it's going to kick out to this delay node. Nothing is going to complete out of here until this condition is met, 2 seconds. When 2 seconds is met, it's going to kick out from here and run into the next node, which in this case sets the intensity. So check this out. You're going to see the impulse run out. It's going to get held up by the delay. And then it kicks out. Question?
So how intuitive are the naming convention for the functions that you call out? Can I literally know nothing and then be able to go in there and then search up for myself?
I think it's useful if you, any sort of programming nomenclature background is useful because they're named in logical sort of ways. Like you would expect delay to be called delay, but if you've never thought of anything like that before, you might call it pause or hold up. I don't know what others. What's the thesaurus for delay? Wait, yeah, like I could totally see somebody typing that in, right? So how do you know? That's a good question. You just have to look at the list and try. I suppose most things are named at least somewhat relevant. Like get actor location, I think that makes sense, but only if you know that these things are supposed to be called actors, right?
I mean, not even about actors. It's just like in many like control console and like games, they're like suffix to actions like get or spawn or that whatever, and then like, the suffix is just the suffix just like whatever. Yeah. That doesn't really make sense.
No, I understand. And that's why it's useful to drag the wire out from the node, because even if you don't know what you're looking for, you have this huge list of stuff, right? That you can start to deduce what it is that you're going for.
This kind of confines, like this wire confines like the options that you have that can connect to the wire.
Yeah, because it's set to context sensitive. If you uncheck that, then it shows you everything, regardless of if you drag the wire out. But again, you need to know that these things are called actors, right? But if I click the drop down for actor, then I should start to see, oops, I can't zoom in at the same time. Actually, I don't even know where would get actor location be? Like transformation? Oh yeah, that is a thing. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so there's a transformation section, hopefully you've heard of transformation if you've ever worked with 3D before, but if you didn't, then you probably wouldn't know what transformation is, except they're like, cartoon characters or something like that. But here's a list of things that you might want to do. If I could scroll down, it would say all the gets: get actor location, get actor rotation, get actor local transformation, get actor world transformation. These are all different things. Like local transform versus world transform. What's the difference between that? That's a lot of stuff. It's really just trial and error.
Oh, another question. So like the blueprints that you built today are pretty specific. Like you introduce blueprints as something that you create, say like a class that you can use on many other instances to like for better efficiency. But then like
I didn't do any of that.
Create are pretty specific. Say like the light trigger on a certain Z axis.
Yeah.
I don't assume you can like just use that blueprint or something else because like your Z is dependent and like
Sure, absolutely. And we didn't make any class blueprints because we just ran out of time. So I guess we'll do that next class. This was all level blueprint stuff, which works when you have a single level in this place that you're putting it into. But if I went back to the street light example, right, where I have the static mesh for the street light, and then the light bulb, which is the point light, I wouldn't necessarily want to make that in my level blueprint if I have a bunch of levels. I would want all of that code to do the set intensity. I could take that stuff and put it in a blueprint class, which has the mesh for the light, the point light, and also has the trigger boxes as well, all consolidated together. That exists as an actor in my content browser, which then I can drag out into any number of different levels.
So instead, like the world blueprint of this specific level lighting up while like its step is detected, you have like this light itself as a class blueprint that you can incorporate into other levels.
Exactly, because it's level agnostic then. Did you have a question?
You used to show your spotlight
A little network. This one or the spotlight one?
The spotlight, yeah.
I'll take a picture of those too. So, yeah, we ran out of time. We'll pick up some more blueprint stuff next week. And my plan was to start the conversation about the final projects next week. Nothing final, but just to start that percolating in the back of your head. There's also a number of outstanding things that I would like to cover still, but there's only so much time. So during the week, over the next couple of days, or maybe even today, I'll probably ask in the chat just if there's specific things that the group would like to go over so we can focus our remaining energies on those. And then we can have enough time to talk about the final projects and have enough time to work on that still. Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
For the final, do you just need like any kind of live input? It doesn't necessarily have to be in live.
Your final project can be anything, but it usually falls into it's a live performance that we all go down and watch you do. Like the game where the people are hitting the positions, or throwing the rubber duckies, that's a live performance. Or it doesn't have to be it doesn't have to be a game even. We've had students in class who are classically trained dancers, really good dancers, and they just do a pretty performance with particle effects on their arms. And it's really beautiful. That's a fantastic final as well. It doesn't have to be interactive. It also can just be a video like what you guys did today, right?
Is there like a link requirement?
We're asking way too many final questions.
I gotta know.
No, because you could make a 10-second video and have it be kick-ass, or you could make a 2-minute video and have it really suck. I always get that question, which is absolutely fine. But I would always get that question when I used to teach a Photoshop class. How many layers should I have? Man, it doesn't matter.
That phrase just sounds sad. 2 minutes but suck.